Hello and welcome to Public Affairs Now, our super local look at what's going on in the Maryland General Assembly and the Anne Arundel County Council. In this episode, we'll update you on the State House as they enter the final days of their 3-month-long legislative session. Today we welcome back Len Lazarick from MarylandReporter.com, and we also have a special guest, Delegate Mark Chang. Thank you both for joining us today.
Good to be here.
Thank you very much, Carla.
Len, we're in the final stretch. Explain to our viewers the difference between the last month of the session and the first 2 months.
Well, in the first 2 months, they don't do, particularly in the first month, this year when we had the inauguration and all the new delegates, like Delegate Chang here, everybody's getting used to the new situation, and there weren't pre-filed bills, so you had, they really didn't do much in the first month. In a lot of sessions, they don't do an awful lot in the first month, but this year, there were very little hearings, very little bills. So now we're coming to crunch time. We're coming into the last 30 days, and they have a lot of work left to do, a lot of voting in session, long nights. The House Appropriations Committee, probably, on which Delegate Chang serves, is probably one of the most hardest working committees because they have to get the budget going, and that will be finished up this week. So we're really into crunch time, and if people are following bills, now is the time to start checking on what the action is, because unlike the hearings, the voting sessions are not online on video.
And how about you, Delegate Chang? What will we be seeing in the next 3 weeks?
Thank you very much, Carla, for having me on the show. It's great to be back on the show. First of all, it's as Len said, that it's usually when the session starts, typically in the year, it's pretty slow. But going forward in the remaining days, it's a 90-day session, and we have a little less than 30 days left to go. Going forward, we're going to be making a lot of tough decisions. Right now, the state's in some tough economic times as far as the deficit, and so we're working in our committees to be able to resolve those deficits and get a balanced budget. I'll just give you a little breakdown. I'm on the House Appropriations Committee, and that's a budgetary committee. The rest of the committees in the House are policy committees, and so within the House Appropriations Committee, we have subcommittees, and I'm on the Public Safety and Administration subcommittee. So my committee hears hearings and issues regarding state police, shock trauma, the judiciary system, the public defender. So we're going right now, and we will be making decisions real soon as far as what type of funding and their budgets for those this coming fiscal year in those different agencies. And then what happens is there's also other subcommittees, such as the Capital Subcommittee and the Health and Education Subcommittees, and all those different subcommittees are going to be making their recommendations in conjunction with working with the Department of Legislative Services, and then bringing that to the full committee in the very near future here.
Now, Delegate, this is your first session as an elected official, but many of us have been lucky enough to know you for a long time. You represent District 32 in the House, which includes the northwest portion of the county from roughly Glen Burnie to Hanover. What has your experience been like so far? Have there been any surprises?
Well, I tell you, it's a great honor. I'm very humbled to represent the citizens of the 32nd District, along with Senator Eddie Grange and Delegate Pam Bidle, Delegate Ted Sophocles, and myself, and all of us. We have the same value of always putting our community first. We're all from the community. I still live in my old childhood home in downtown Glen Burnie, so we always put the community first and always listen to what they have to say. And we're getting tons of emails, phone calls on different issues. During the legislative session, I make it a top priority to keep on getting back out to the district and getting out to those different community meetings at nighttime or on the weekends and hearing what the folks have to say. My background is community relations, work for Anne Arundel County. I've done that for several years, built a ton of relationships out in the community, and so it's great to be able to just have that foundation already in place. As far as now being in the General Assembly and being the House of Delegates, a lot of it's learning about how the institution works, how the House of Delegates work, how a bill comes out, an idea, a concept of a bill comes out, and then as far as making its way, getting formatted and then working its way through the different committees, and then out to the House floor, and then eventually out to the Senate floor, and then eventually to full passage. So right now, I think we have all together, both in the House and Senate, there's about maybe a couple thousand bills that are going, that have been bill drafted, and so those bills are going, or have been and are going through the different committees, and so eventually those bills will either get a favorable or unfavorable vote, and then be passed on to the appropriate floors and then heard before both houses.
Well, it looks like you're sponsoring a few pieces of legislation. Can you tell us a little bit about one of them?
Sure. The two that I am a lead sponsor on is, first of all, a bond bill to help do some restorations of the historic Masonic Temple in downtown Glen Burnie. They're a great community partner. They've been around since 1921. They help with a lot of scholarships with students in our high schools, and also helping folks that need help with health, who don't have the means to be able to pay for different types of health services. And they've been a big advocate helping those folks out. So it's to help them with restorations projects there. And then the second one is near and dear to my heart. The folks with developmental disabilities has always been an important part of my life, and so the Arc of the Chesapeake just bought a property off of 170 in Severn, and they've asked if we could, and I have put a bond bill in to do restorations and renovations over at that building there, so that they can help folks out with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Len, you recently talked to a group of freshman legislators. What are you hearing from them?
Well, actually, my reporter, Rebecca Lessner, spoke to most of them, but in general, the most surprising thing to them and to me, as a matter of fact, was that a lot of them found the legislature a lot less partisan than they expected it to be. Partly, I guess, on the campaign trail, you emphasize kind of partisan issues, and there's so many issues that you find on policy matters where there's not a Democratic position or Republican position, and they're all together on committees, and they're dealing with a lot of issues which aren't necessarily ideological, much as on the Appropriations Committee, things are not really that ideological, and even the terminology which we have, which comes from Congress about working across the aisle. Well, there are aisles here in the General Assembly, in the House of Delegates chamber, but the Republicans and Democrats are all mixed together. People sit by geography and not by party. So you will find as you go along that 90% of the bills get passed by almost unanimous votes. There's probably 10% or less than votes where there's a real partisan divide. So in terms of people following the legislature, I think it's I don't know whether Mark has experienced this, but I think it's true what the new delegates were finding from my experience down here.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you, Len. It's definitely it definitely takes teamwork to get the job done down here. We've got a lot of tough work to do this session with the budget. We got tough decisions to make, and it really does take teamwork to be able to get the job done, compromise, and look out for all parts of the state. Again, my background is community relations in the Anne Arundel County area, but understanding what the needs are in Western Maryland, understanding what the needs are in Eastern Shore, Southern Maryland, and so we had a lot of opportunity to collaborate, and it's a lot of teamwork, and I think that the citizens of the state out there, they're going to be proud of their legislators working down here and working hard to get the job done in a manner where we're working together as one Maryland and working in a team-based fashion.
And I would also throw in that the notion of public service. I mean, a lot of people have this image of of politicians and being so ambitious, and certainly you have to have ambition to put yourself through the campaign process as they do. But a lot of them, like Mark and so many of the new delegates, are really committed to public service as well. I mean, they're really interested in serving their constituents.
Now let's hit all of the tax issues at once. Delegate Chang, as a member of the Appropriations Committee, you're hearing a lot of the discussions around the budget. And this week, the decision-making is being finalized. What are the hot topics?
The hot topics are education. Education's a huge topic. School construction. We're hearing a lot about that. There's a lot of development going on in our state. A lot of families are moving into the area. So we got school capacity issues, and we've got a lot of older schools too. So making sure that we fully fund those education process and projects out there, and just making sure we do what we need to do for that. And also, we are going through some tough times right now. Recovering through the economy. So families out there are still struggling. So we're looking at what we need to do to protect the safety net programs that are out there to help folks who need a helping hand and get through these difficult economic times. And then on the other side, we're looking at what we need to do to try to help families economically with keeping more money in their pockets.
Len, take each of these taxes, the gas tax and the rain tax. Do you see any changes coming?
On the gas tax, that is the governor's proposal to stop the automatic increases. In general, the Democratic leadership of the House and Senate are opposed to that. They struggled for years to try to get increases in the gas tax. They really don't want to backslide on that. Governor Hogan's position is they ought to take a vote every time the gas tax goes up. I don't think that'll be successful. The governor's proposal to totally repeal the stormwater management fee, the so-called rain tax, that has failed. The only bill left standing is Senator Miller's bill. The governor has fully embraced that. It would require the counties to say if they're not going to have a separate stormwater management fee or rain tax, that they need to spell out how they're going to fix their stormwater problem. And as you know, that's a significant issue in Anne Arundel County, which has the most coastline of any county in Maryland. Lots of rivers and tributaries flowing into the Chesapeake Bay, and lots of old infrastructure. So it's a significant problem here. That will pass the Senate. I say that on the basis that the bill has 29 co-sponsors, which means it already has a majority of the Senate. Whether the House will move on it, I don't know. We'll have to see.
Let's change topics for a moment and talk about some big news in political circles. Longtime U.S. Senator Barbara Mikulski is retiring. Delegate Chang, you have worked with the senator before. What are your thoughts on her tenure?
Absolutely. I had the honor and blessing to be able to work with Senator Mikulski and her staff for several years when I was on the local level. And Senator Mikulski, she's definitely all what Maryland's about. She's got a lot of pride for Maryland. She cares about Maryland. She loves Maryland. I know, some folks out there might not necessarily agree with everything she voted on or her policy issues, but what we all can say though is that she fought for Maryland, and she continues to fight for Maryland on a daily basis, and that's been she's been a really good example to me, because when I got into public service, I was looking for mentors who would be good role models as far as getting the job done on a daily basis for the citizens that we work for, and Senator Mikulski has been a great example, and Maryland has benefited a lot, and our country too, from her hard work. And I know personally, I just want to thank Senator Mikulski for the great work she's done. And I don't think she's going anywhere. I think she's going to continue to fight for Maryland, and just in a different capacity.
And of course, there is the long list of possible successors. Who are some of the people on the list right now, Len?
Well, seats like this don't open up very often. At the moment, we have Congressman Chris Van Hollen from Montgomery County. He was the first declared candidate. Representative Donna Edwards from Prince George's County, who also represents, through that strange convoluted districts, the way they are drawn, represents parts of Anne Arundel County. And if you can figure out which district you're in Anne Arundel County, that's good for you. Also representing Anne Arundel County, John Sarbanes in the 3rd District. Just because of his name, and his father, Paul Sarbanes, was the longest-serving senator. He's on the list. Last week in the House, Chris Van Hollen came down. Representative John Delaney from Potomac, representing Western Maryland, was down just coincidentally for a bill hearing. The legislature will be seeing a lot of those people. A lot of them are trying to round up very early support, and the fact that they're running means that other folks are running for their seats. And on the Republican side, actually, former County Executive Laura Newman has been mentioned, and she says she's contemplating the race. The Ehrlichs, both Bob and Kendall, have been mentioned looking at the race. Delegate Kathy Shalega, Congressman Andy Harris, another Anne Arundel County resident, Dan Bongino, who ran for the Senate against Ben Cardin. So there's going to be a lot of activity. Believe it or not, we still have 13 months to go before even the party primaries. And Barbara Mikulski is still around and fighting. I think they had a directive in her office that any press release had to have the word fight in the headline because she was always fighting for something or other. And it's one of the reasons that she was the most popular politician in Maryland, because even people who didn't like her very liberal politics knew that if they had a problem with the federal government, that they could go to Mikulski, and she would be one to fight, particularly for the underdog.
On the local front, we have had a lot of talk about how the school board is selected. Delegate Chang, can you walk us through this issue and tell us what you've heard at the hearings?
Absolutely. The current school board nomination process is folks who are interested in seeking a seat on the school board. What they do is they go through a nominating process, and the nominating committee, they hear their testimonies from the different candidates out there. And I might say that this year we've had several candidates, highly qualified candidates, come out through the process and put their names in for these vacant seats that have come up. And so those different names are being considered by the commission. And then in the process too, the community has a lot of has the opportunity to have a lot of input as far as asking questions to these different candidates. So what I would highly recommend right now, since we do have the nomination the process that we do have, is that folks in the community, the PTAs, the everyday parents, community groups, they pay attention to who the different candidates are when they go through the nominating process. And then, once those names are recommended through the nominating commission, they are then forwarded on to the governor for approval. So right now, I think right now they're still the candidates are still waiting to see who will get selected for those seats.
And Len, what is the prognosis on this issue?
Well, the problem has always been with the Senate delegation, and at this point I really don't know what the prognosis is, but I would just point out that 40 years ago, when I started reporting in Maryland, I covered the Howard County School Board, which was just transitioning from being an appointed school board, as most boards were at that point, to an elected board. Now in the state, it's 17 or 19 counties have elected school boards in some form, and so Anne Arundel County is really an outlier on this by not having an elected school board. The proposal is for a hybrid board now, some appointed, some elected. one would have to think that at some point Anne Arundel County is going to join most of the rest of the state with some kind of elected school board. But well, I don't know what Mark thinks about that. What do you think?
Well, right now, there are a couple bills. Actually, one bill that went through the House, and actually it got an unfavorable report. And so one of the concerns that, at least personally, I have, is that it's got a pretty high fiscal note to it. I think that right now, I believe it's maybe a few $1,000s for each person that's on the school board right now, as far as they would get compensation. But I think in about 5 years, that cost increases about $78,000. So I mean, during these tough economic times, we're talking about fiscal restraint and looking what we can do to save money. I think that we're trying to find money right now in appropriations to pay for these different programs, and it's got a pretty high fiscal note from my perspective on this, and so as far as on the House side, the bill did die this week.
Two bills that are a bit of a surprise this session. One would raise the speed limit on interstate highways to 70 miles per hour. Another would change the one-year waiting period for divorce in Maryland. What are your thoughts on these bills, Delegate?
Thanks, Carla, for asking those two questions. The first question, the increasing the speed limit to 70, that vote actually happened last week. We had the vote on the House floor, and actually it did pass. I was one of 10 who voted against the bill, and my concerns was, as far as increasing the speed limit of safety issues. I was concerned about as far as our roads being safe, and if we increase it to the 70, then a few years from now we're going to think about increasing it even higher and higher. So that was the one of the main things. And the second was an environmental aspect, in my opinion, is that we're trying to as a whole, we're trying to promote environmental sustainability, reduce consumption, and the higher speed limits tend to have you tend to burn more fuel when you're going at those rates. So I looked at it from an environmental and safety standpoint as far as the way I voted. And then the second one dealt with the limited divorce, and actually that passed, and I did vote for that as far as a time period where folks can try to reconcile. Two partners and two spouses could try to reconcile their differences before going to an absolute divorce. And 50, I think the statistics is about 50% of all marriages end in divorce. And I think that this is a good bill to give it a little time between two spouses to try to work out their differences, and maybe try to save the marriage down the road.
I just want to point out on the speed limit bill that it's a permissive bill. It doesn't force the State Highway Administration to raise the speed limits. And actually, when given the choice in situations like the intercounty connector that goes from I-95 over to Rockville on Gaithersburg, that only has a 60 mile per hour speed limit, where I-95, a much heavier traveled route, is at 65. So there's certainly inconsistencies, but one of the arguments against it, of course, is that when you have posted speed limit of 65, as it is on I-97, for instance, which I traveled on this morning, everybody's going 70 or 75. So if you raise it to 70, does that mean everybody's going 80? And of course, speed does kill. When you have a crash at 70 or 75, you're more likely to have more serious injuries than at 10 miles per hour or less. So that's one of the arguments against it.
Well, the session moves very quickly, and it will be over before we know it. Thank you to our guests, Delegate Mark Chang and Len Lazarick. You can read Len's dispatches from Annapolis by subscribing to MarylandReporter.com. You can also like his Facebook page for regular updates. We'll see you next time.
Thank you very much, Carla.
Thanks for having us.